Are we live on Facebook?
Almost. It's like spinning. Okay, there we go. I'm just going to add today's interview. I'm hitting go live. I'm thinking people can still see us, and that's fine. We're coming on. So 1 second. And then Hello and welcome to the Transformational Speakers Podcast. I'm your host, Erin Lohman-Jack, and today we have with me a good friend of mine who we've been sitting here talking. We're like, man, we haven't hit record yet because this is some good stuff. But Calvin and I have known each other for about, 6 years? Because how long was it ago?
It feels like 6 years, but there's no effing way. Can we swear on this? I don't know how much we can swear, but there's no way. There's no fucking way it's been 6 years. It's only been 3 years since I quit my day job. So, and I've met you within that. Like literally, it's probably been 3 years.
Okay. When did we do School of Greatness Academy?
That was it. So 2015.
Okay.
2015, I quit my day job. I was like, I have $500 in cash. Should I save it for rent or should I do something to make myself better? And I put it in School of Greatness. So the early 2015 is how long we've known each other.
Yeah. That's right. Because for me, I was in School of Greatness 1.0. So I was
and I was 3. And at that point, they were 6 months apart, I think, for whatever reason. But so I was like March. I came in March-ish, 2015.
Okay. That's crazy.
Yeah.
All right. So our guest, Calvin Wayman, has an unconventional background. He came from a small town with 5 adults and a few dozen kids. That small town was the home he grew up in. He actually comes from a large polygamous family. He grew up with 4 moms. Yes, 4. And more than 40 brothers and sisters. Do you have all their names? Do you know all their names?
100%.
That's
it
awesome.
Would be hard to ring them all off right now, but yeah, totally. Aaron, Leroy, Pamela, Klein, Guy, Miriam, I could, yeah, totally.
We've been talking about that because I have a new obsession with a TV show called Escaping Polygamy.
Yep.
While he had an amazing upbringing with lots of love to go around, he has since gone out and charted his own course. In 2015, he left his safe job and created a life of his own. The journey has been the hardest thing he's ever encountered, but the most fulfilling as well. He's been sharing virtually every step of the way with his audience on YouTube, podcasts, and social media. Since quitting his day job 3 years ago, he transformed multiple areas of his life, and he's been documenting everything. He went from being deeply in debt to paying off $53,000 to be officially debt-free for the first time in his life. He transformed his health. I've watched that one personally by dropping more than 50 pounds. He started a few small businesses and began documenting his journey on social media. He is today a writer, entrepreneur, and keynote storyteller. He's the creator of the YouTube show Making the Millionaire, which is one of my favorite things to always watch, where his vlog where he's documenting his journey from broke and in debt to starting businesses and ultimately to the millionaire he's becoming. He's also the author of the best-selling book, Fish Out of Water, which I also have. Whoop, whoop. And I'm so glad you're here. So thank you so much, Calvin, for being here.
Dude, finally glad we finally pushed record. Like the conversation's been so rad. We get it. People get to come on board.
I know. I'm like, would my audience want to know about polygamy? I mean, the side note that most people don't know is I did grow up outside of Salt Lake City for a couple years, and it was a major point in my life where I really looked at myself and thought there was something wrong with me because I said things like crap and suck, fart. And I was being judged for it.
You are super horrible, Aaron. You should not ever say crap. That's just fucking wrong.
It is so fucking wrong. So, so it's been fun to sit here and talk because I do know so much more about Mormonism than most people know that about my background, but also now to learn the deep parts of brainwashing with some of these cults things and some of the stuff.
It's super interesting, man. Again, I had a lucky upbringing in that part that the religion that I was in wasn't as insane as some. I had like I mentioned, a ton of love and good things from it. But yeah, one wife is enough for me.
I know. And you have 2 beautiful children.
Yeah. Belle and Archie.
And it's probably a lot easier than having 40. Was it 40 brothers?
You know what's really funny is I watched Seven Brides for Seven Brothers back in the day, and they kind of have their kids in order. And I was like, I was totally going to do that. And so I've been doing that. So people thought that I did that because I'm going to have 26 kids, but my first kid's Archie, then Belle, my next kid. I don't know how many kids I'll have, but it definitely will start with a C. I don't know if that's because I'm a polygamist, but I don't know, or at least grew up in it. But yeah.
It's funny. I love it. No, so I've been loving watching you grow. I mean, when you first started in School of Greatness Academy with Lewis House, we connected then. Yep. And I remember you just getting started with saying, you know, I want to start my own thing and do my own, and not having clarity exactly on what you wanted. But then watching it evolve from like this little thing, oh, I teach social media, I have a small media company, like these little tiny seeds that now you're speaking on massive stages. You've got so many things going on. It's amazing.
Yeah. Now doing this, the big thing this year has been this 6-figure secret thing, helping people get out of debt and get their money right. And that's probably been the most fun. So, but that's what it takes, man, is what I found is as you are in the game and taking steps, that's how it kind of evolves and unfolds. It's literally like that. So I'm glad that you did that gesture, because you don't know it a lot of times just studying on the sidelines. You got to get moving and taking action, and then you see it unfold that this is what your gift really is. So
right. And every time you take a step, it just clarifies which direction you need to be headed towards, you know, and just really, you know, because when I left, I was like, I want to be a coach, because I wanted to attract people that wanted help. You know, I went to school to be a family therapist, and people didn't want to change in therapy. They just wanted to complain. So that was the first step. Then it was, oh, wait, I'm really good at business. I should really be helping people more with their business. And then it was business coaching. And then it really was truly when everyone kept saying, I see you speaking everywhere. What do you do? And then I'm like, I don't know. What do I do? And then started doing that. And now I know this is where I'm supposed to be. But it was that just taking steps and figuring it out along the way.
So true, man. I was a young man actually just reached out to me this week and said, I've been following you on social media. You don't know who I am, but can I buy you lunch? And I don't know how many times I will get a chance to do that, because he was actually in the same town I'm in. And I was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. But one of the things that I told him that is so along these lines is, he's like, what advice would you give yourself starting again? And I think the reason it took me so long to jump in, or like why we're afraid to use our gift, why we're afraid to jump, is we think that to start, we have to have total clarity. And what I told him is, the advice I would say is you're already enough, because you don't need to know everything. All you need to know is what's the next step. And we always do. Like, we know where we want to go and we know where we are now. So in relation to that, what's the next step? Like for me in my day job, I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, right? So if I wanted to be an entrepreneur, what the F was I doing being an employee, right? So I quit my day job before I had anything completely lined up. That's all I knew was the next step. And then to your point, as I've done that and taken a step, not knowing what C was, after I stepped on B, then I started to say, oh, I think that's what C is, and then stepped on C. Oh, now that I'm on C, that's what D is. And then those things just unfold. And I think it's better that way, honestly. Like if a GPS, when you were leaving your driveway, if you're going from Seattle to Salt Lake City or anything, if you're in your driveway and you had to memorize every turn and everything you were going to do, even if it was totally crystal clear, this is what you got to do to get to where it is you want to go, you would be so mother effing overwhelmed, you wouldn't want to leave the driveway.
Yeah.
But instead, so I think life and entrepreneurship especially is a lot like the GPS. You know where you want to go, but really all you need to focus on is what's the next turn? What's the next step? So yeah, it's a good point.
I think you'd be bored. I would be bored if I knew all the steps along the way and it didn't get to unfold for me. And you just knew, okay, just expect this and this and this and this. And I'd be so bored.
Out of all of these events that you've attended, have you ever been to a Kyle Cease event?
I've been to, he did a thing here in Seattle because he's from Seattle. I think it was a smaller thing. It was like 3 hours. He brought like 2 or 3 people up on stage, and actually one of those women sat right in front of me. I love this story. Tanya got up on there and she wanted to be a motivational speaker. And they said that she thought she was too loud, too big, too much, too whatever. And so he was working with her. And I was like, the odds of her sitting right in front of me and getting called on stage for this, I was like, there's no accidents. And my event, my speaker summit was coming up like 2 days later. So nice. I just reached over and I'm like, I'm giving you a free ticket to my event. And she lived in Vancouver, BC, and she drove down and she brought a friend and she came. And so I've been to that, but I haven't been to like, I know he's not even doing Evolving Out Loud now.
Oh, he's not?
No, he put something out just right before his last one and saying, this is the last one. Something else is going to come, but I need to let go of this so something else can evolve.
Got it. So he just has this big thing. You would love his full event, but you got a taste of him if you went to that. But he just talks about this. He made me realize how cool it is to fall in love with not knowing, because the knowing, first of all, you can only know so much because it's based on the past. This was such a cool realization that clicked for me when I was at his event. Like literally your brain's job is not to make you happy. It's not to make you grow. It's not to get you to where you want to be. It's just make you survive. So it's only repeating this bullshit pattern from your past. So why would you want to know everything in the future? Because literally you can only imagine based on all of your past like experience, right? So it became such a click for me. Like, yeah, I am better to not know. Like literally it could be even better than I could ever plan. And it totally has been, man. Like since we just brought him up, like crazy coincidences. I was at his event. He did pull me up on stage, which was random, at least maybe not random. Right. And he made me declare something. And I was like, I'm ready to start speaking in front of a lot of people. And it's kind of similar story. He did this weird exercise with me, and this was in front of 1,400 people. And I was like, holy crap, this feels like home. I want to do something like this. 2 weeks after that event, the most random thing happened. A 19-year-old kid reached out to me on Facebook and said, I've been watching your stuff. You should get involved with this event. And when he said get involved, I thought he meant donate to it. And I was like, sell me, why should I get involved? He's like, well, first of all, you'll get paid and they'll fly you out. And it was actually in Seattle. So another connection. So they flew me to Seattle, 2,200 people.
The DECA conference.
Yeah, 2,200 people after that. So yeah, it's interesting. It's crazy. Anyway, I guess my main point there is I didn't know that was even possible. I didn't know that there was something called DECA at the time. Like it was just leaning into and taking steps in the unknowing and then figuring it out and like, holy F-bomb, I'm going to speak at this whole conference called DECA. I don't know how many people are going to be in my breakout room or whatever, but hey, I get to speak to this cool organization. And this is the craziest part of the story is I was like, they had been posting on social media that they're going to be announcing their keynote. And so I go to Twitter the day they're going to announce it. Cause again, I figure I'm going to have a breakout. But it's 2,200 people. So I'm still probably going to have at least a couple hundred in there. That's crazy. And they announce on Twitter, our celebrity keynote speaker, Calvin Wayman. And I had never even spoken before. And they had no idea. They had no idea that I'd never done anything like that before. Blew my mind. I went to their Facebook page their website to see if they're just calling everybody keynote. And like, this can't be right. And sure enough, they put me as their opening keynote in front of the entire effing audience of 2,200 people. And still to this day, unless they listen to this podcast, I mean, I'm an open book. I don't care if they do listen to it, but literally they thought that I'd been doing that forever. Yeah. I mean, they probably didn't feel that way afterwards because I'm sure I had enough ums and uhs or whatever. Like, for being a speaker, you sure didn't have everything polished.
But your audience was young, kids, so they don't even notice.
Right. Yeah. But so it was a blast. But again, just to the point, I couldn't have planned that. I couldn't have predicted or made that happen. So I just think it's an interesting point that both of us are coming to of like, yeah, leaning into that not knowing because it's even better when you do.
Yeah. And I think, I remember you saying, I'm going to do a TEDx. How do I do that? And now look at you.
Yeah.
When's your TEDx?
Hopefully soon. I don't know how much of my audience will see this, but for my audience, I'm keeping it on the DL of all the details around that, but soon. It'll be soon.
Like by next year. How's
Yes.
that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So tell me a little bit more about, I want people to understand your unique perspective on debt and getting out of debt.
Sweet. So I was insanely in debt. I did all the right things, I thought, and uh, found myself one day. My wife came to me and was like, "This was," and says, "It shows 2 lines." I was like, "What shows 2 lines? What are you talking about?" We were pregnant, right? And so I had just barely gotten married. We had been married for like 4 months. I graduated that year, within that last year. And suddenly I started feeling all this pressure and this responsibility come onto me, right? And so as soon as I found out I was having a kid, I was like, holy crap, I got to get some stuff figured out. And then I looked at all my big financial picture, and I was 53 grand in debt, and scared the freaking hell out of me. But it was enough that I was like, I'm going to figure this out. So I just became insanely obsessed with everything to do with money. But with everything that I was reading, I felt like it was still disconnecting in the way that it was making mathematical sense or mind sense, but not behavioral sense, like not for regular humans. So there's a couple things that I discovered in my debt-free journey that really worked. And to make a long story short, from that point, in 2 or 3 short years later, I became officially debt-free for the first time in my entire adult life. And I actually ended up going on the Dave Ramsey radio show. Are you familiar with Dave Ramsey?
Yeah, only because of you. Well, because that was
Sweet.
my first thing that I figured out.
Sweet. So I went on the Dave Ramsey radio show, and he said something interesting. He said that it normally takes, for my situation, it should have taken like 4 times longer to get out of debt for my income and everything, but it happened really, really fast. Like, again, only 25% of the time of what it normally takes. So why is that? We just had a little conversation about that. But I started having other people start asking me, why did you get out of debt as fast? What did you do to gain control? And there's some things that I did that were stinking radical. And one of them is this, that I actually teach in my courses and everything, but I'll just share them here. One of them is you have to stop mixing your money. So back in the day, before money was money, we just traded. And to make trading easier, we just started using this thing called currency, turned into money. And so there's like, and then we have one checking account, and all those different things that we would trade is now looked as to like one thing. But not all dollars are created equal. We have different functions in our life. And one of the biggest pitfalls that makes us get into debt is having one main checking account that you don't even really know what you really have and what your financial picture really is. So the first thing that I did and that I teach is to separate the function of income and outflow. So this is what you do. You literally have a checking account that is only for income. That is only function of that account is any money that you make goes into that account. You don't even have a debit card tied to that. You protect it because there's too many of us, I was one of them, that have automatic payments coming from the same checking account. That's so deadly. Like, people are taking your money and you may not even know. Like,
No.
It creates bleeding. Like, imagine if you were physically bleeding, like you were shot in the gut and you're bleeding and gushing blood. You need to go to the hospital, right? But you don't even see it because it's invisible. A lot of that happens with us financially. We can literally bleed money. And for some of us, it's only a few dollars here and there a month, but it adds up. I had somebody that has gone through my course this year. He was making decent money. He was bleeding $7,000 a month and didn't realize it. And so separating those two things really puts a focal point. So this is what you do with the outflow. With the outflow account, it's basically a black hole. It's just an account that you have where you set money that you have already mentally spent and you're just waiting for somebody to come collect it. For example, most of us have an automatic payment on like rent or a car payment. So instead of that sitting in your main income account, you separate those and say, I'm paying for my rent right now. And you just literally take that rent money and put it in your outflow. Now, mentally, that's just gone. Anything in your outflow account, that is gone. You're not accumulating that. You will never accumulate that. Its only function is holding money that you have already spent and you're just waiting for somebody to come collect it. That's it. That's totally it. And what that's going to do is start to make you see what your real financial picture is. Because a lot of times we look at our bank account too, and we only have a feel for what our money situation is in that moment, because we know we have these bills coming up, but we still don't really know how much do I really have. It says $5,000, but do I have 5,000 or I have 3,700 because I know of these other bills that are coming in the next couple of weeks. But right. When you go sit down to do finances and you pay the bills and you transfer the money from the income to the outflow, and again, that outflow is just considered a black hole. It's just money you put in that you're waiting for somebody to come take. Then when you look at your income account, it's money that you actually know you can do something with. So that's the big first thing, is separating your income from your outgo. And then the second idea, now before this, one thing that I have people do that I recommend is, before even starting that, set up an emergency fund, because it'll just help you with the rest of the entire thing. If you set up an emergency fund that's $1,000, then it will just give you peace of mind that when you're transitioning to this new way of behaving with money, you know you have a buffer that will save you and everything. So that just helps people's peace of mind. It helped me. So I always have an emergency fund. So have an emergency fund, separate your income and the outgo. And then the next step that is so insane to a lot of people is something I call account zero. And that is this. You now have an income account that has no leaks, right? Like there's no automatic payments. Those are done. Like all of your automatic payments, you're sitting down, you're doing finances. You just barely accounted for rent, your credit card payments, your car payment, all your payments. And now you have leftover money in your income account. What do you do with that? This is the crazy idea. Spend every last dollar right then, right now. Account zero. Spend every dollar one sitting right then, right now. That's crazy to a lot of people. But the reason we do that is most of the time we spend money in isolation and on the short term based on what we feel in the moment. We're like, should I get this or should I get that? And again, we're looking at our bank account, not even knowing our real picture. But when you spend your money and you force yourself to spend all your money right then, it makes you to start realizing how all of your dollars are actually connected together. And you start spending in a more holistic sense and in a long-term sense. So instead of short-term, you're thinking long-term, because you're like, well, what's coming up? Well, I need to have food. So I'm going to take this money and I'm going to open up an account that's only for food, or if you're getting started, literally put it on cash, and that's literally only for food. Or my food account would cover any household items. But literally your job is to give, it's almost like forced budgeting, because people are like, isn't this kind of like budgeting? No, budgeting is broken, because budgeting is like having just a plan, but a plan by itself doesn't do anything. And if information and having a plan was all we needed, then in America, we would be the very best off in every area. We'd be the most fit. We'd be the sexiest. We'd be like, because we have oodles and oodles of information everywhere, right? Or shall I say Googles of information everywhere. But it's just not about information, right? It's about our behavior and everything around it. And so what this starts to do is shift your behavior around the way that you deal with money. And when you spend all of your money at once, it starts to shift your behavior to think more long-term, more holistic instead of isolated. And so literally give every dollar a job, otherwise it will go away. And again, I also like to compare it to exercise and working out. Like people are thinking that having a good budget is all you need is like thinking if you are on if you get given the perfect diet, you're going to be perfect. No. It's not just about the information. It's about what you do with it. But when you spend all your money at once, it's forcing the budget in a sense. Like it's saying, this is what I'm doing, and you do it right then. It's almost like if you could do this imagine if you could do this with your physical body. It's almost like saying, over the next week or two, I'm going to have this many calories and I'm going to eat them all right now, so I don't have to think about it. Like, what if you could do that and you're not going to be hungry? You're not going to go bad. Like if you could literally eat all your calories right now for the next 2 weeks and that would be good, that would be insane. It'd be so easy. You wouldn't have to worry about willpower and think about it every single time. You can't do that physically, but you can do that with money. And so that's what doing account zero does. You're spending all of your money down to zero. You're giving every single dollar a job. And when you do that, man, something super interesting happens. You start to have peace of mind for the first time. Like once you're done with your account zero, you put everything in the outflow that's ready to come out automatically. You spent every dollar in there. You can take a deep breath and breathe out, because now you're like, between now and the next time you get paid, everything just be focused on making more money, getting more money in that income account instead of worrying about all this stuff. And this is something that I did, and it started to make me make better decisions with all of my money. I still gave me money, what I call funny money or FU money, in that, so that I could spend it on whatever I wanted. But it made me a lot smarter, and it also saved me a load of time, because I was spending so much time tracking money and thinking about money, you know? And when you do it this way, you don't have to think about it or track it, because you already did it and it's where it needs to be. Every dollar has a job, and every dollar has a place, and you just barely put every dollar in its place. And so you don't even have to think, you just go. And even to this day, like something I tell my students, like I went from hours and hours and hours doing money that to this day, I now spend less than 30 minutes a month on my finances. 30 minutes a month. And I'm to the point now, I used to be paycheck to paycheck because I got paid like weekly and I needed to take care of bills. But once you do this, an interesting phenomenon happens. You start to get space in your finances. Like you could go from week to week to realize I have enough money for whatever reason that I can go 2 weeks and 3 weeks. And now I do finances for the month ahead. So at the end of the month, so at the end of August 20th, I usually do it between the 20th and the 25th. I do all of my finances for the whole month of September. So I've been good already for the month of September, and I'm still good. All of my traveling, everything is in place. The stuff is in place for food. And if you want to get really nerdy, like one of the things that I do to make this easy, because you might think that this is complicated, but trust me, once it's in place, it's so simple. Like you can literally, when you're doing the account zero, put it in cash. But I literally have, I don't know if you can see this, it's a debit card, and on it says food. So literally that debit card is for food, or that says transport. So anything that's transportation, fuel, Uber, anything like that. This card says travel. So airline, Airbnb, anything like that. So I already have mentally spent that money every time I do finances and put it in those places. So when I need to do those functions, the money is not mixed. I know I have very specific things that money represents. That is my food. That is my transportation. That is my travel. And it's been a ton of fun. It's given me a ton of freedom, and I dig it. And what's been really cool is seeing people implement it and see insane results. Like, again, I told you the guy that paid off or found out he was leaking $7,000 every single month, didn't even know. But through this, people have paid off like over $150,000 this year so far, just implementing this, people and my students and stuff like that. So it's been fun, and that's what I do. And that's what I teach.
How many accounts do you have then? Like, just if you have all these different debit cards, right?
There's a couple ways to answer that. You can do this very cleanly and easily with like 3 to 4. So don't think it's too crazy. But if you ever think about opening an account, it is way easier than people think. Because again, we think it'd be just more convenient to have just one. Trust me, it's not. Like that is where it makes us fall apart. So the answer I give my students on how many accounts they should have is however many that you feel like you need when you're doing your account zero session. So if you want to, for example, I have an account for food, let's say, but that covers any household item. Like if I go to Trader Joe's or Walmart or Costco, it's going to come from food. Anything, like even trash bags, anything that's household, right? But somebody might want to completely separate those two things even further, from food, definitely only food, to household cleaners. I don't know. So it's up to you how many accounts you need, but you can do almost all of it if you do if you're not against cash, I actually like your personal spending and food when you're getting started to be in cash, because you see it actually physically leaving. And when you're in the store, you can count how much do I have and stuff like that. Here's the thing I will say to really make this work. You have to do no cheating. So when you make the decision that this is for food and you have an account for food and you know that that is for food and you have an account for that you can spend on whatever you want, give yourself that freedom. And when you have an account for date night, whatever it is, like make it stay for those things. Don't cheat yourself by using the fuel money for food, because that ruins the entire thing. But if you stick to that, then it just gives you a tremendous freedom, tremendous control. You know exactly where your money is and you don't even have to think about it.
Dude, okay, so I've never heard it talked about like this, and I'm like, okay, when do I
Totally.
sign up for your class? I know that you're
we just barely sold out for September, but I'm sure I'll be doing something else. No, it's been fun.
That's awesome. No, because it makes sense for me how it would, because I keep mental tally in my head, and then my husband, he doesn't know what my mental tally is, right? So then all of a sudden he takes something out. Now we're in the negative because I had things, automatic.
Dude.
And you're right. Like, I hate that part. I need the security of feeling like the bills are paid.
Yes.
When I feel that, then I'm not in this like frantic mode of hustle.
My wife and I were trying to find out like what's the Costco sample of this type of a thing. Like in Costco, they give you like a cookie and you take it and you want to eat the whole thing. Like for following this kind of a system, what's the sample? If there was a sample we could give, it would be the feeling of peace of mind of not having to deal with that bullshit. Like the feeling of peace of mind of getting to spend guilt-free because you put it in that category and you did it ahead, so you know you're good. Right. And like just knowing that I can buy this and I'm going to be good and it's not taking from my mortgage payment.
Yes, because getting my nails done.
Exactly. Dude, here's a great example since you mentioned nails. So last year, we came close to you. We went to Portland. Yeah. My wife and I did a trip to Portland. And we had planned it for a while. So what did we do? We were debt-free. So what's really cool about being debt-free, by the way, I have nothing against good debt, as I call it, which is something that's an investment that's making you more money. Like if you're putting money into a rental property that's giving you a cash flow, good. But most of Americans are doing bullshit, spending it on liabilities that are not bringing anything in, or they go on a vacation that is with a credit card and stuff like that. And that's very, very dangerous because you end up spending more than you should. But here's something that it was really fun. My wife and I knew that we wanted to go on a trip before our baby was born. We called it the baby moon. And so we started, again, since we didn't have any debt payments, what's really cool is when you do the account zero session and you cover your bills, you have a bigger chunk. So we just started putting money towards this vacation. And it was a really good vacation, a full week in Portland with a lot of things planned in, but everything was 100%. The money was totally there. And we knew this is what we have to spend. Like, this is it. And it protected, like, and what was cool is as it was getting near the end, we realized, holy shit, we still have a pretty good cushion in here. Let's do something crazy. And so we ended up doing something like, let's go out to a dinner on this boat for $400 or something, something insane. And we could do that, but knowing it wasn't going to fuck us financially. And then this is where it gets to the nails. Like the day before we left, Becca wanted to get a pedicure and she got me to do a pedicure. I'm a dude. I didn't think I'd ever get a pedicure, but I liked it. And the reason I even did it is we had a couple extra $100 and I could like spend $100 to get a pedicure, and knowing that it was just totally within that thing that we had already allocated towards that vacation. And so it was just a ton of fun. Like that was such a good vacation for both of us, and doing all these different fun things and not having it be a delayed nightmare every time you're swiping. You're like, I'm gonna have to get to work and pay this off. It was literally like, no, it's already paid. Like literally we're on this vacation that's already paid. It's not taking anything from anything. And we're here to really enjoy ourselves. So when people say, go pamper yourself and do something for yourself, we really could do that and not hurt our future or any other part of our finances. So yeah.
I love it. Well, that's exciting because I'm like, ooh, this is a whole new way of thinking about it. And
it totally is.
And I think it's something that both my husband and I could get on the same page with for the first time.
This is what I was going to say there when you brought up your husband. One thing that was an unintended thing that has come up this year is I think I'm going to have to get like a marriage counselor license, because I'm telling you, I am getting couples and people to have conversations that they have never had around money and expose behavior that I don't mean to it. That sounds like that's a bad word, but once you start putting this in place, you just see where the money goes, and people have to get on the same page. You're like, oh wow, so this is how I'm spending. Holy crap! No wonder that this is like that. And so, yeah, I'm really getting people to communicate in a deeper way than they have before. It's been really interesting.
Well, yeah, because both of us, we started working at 14, and we were helping the family. Like I worked, and so then I took all my bills, right? So anything I wanted, softball, volleyball, whatever I needed, I was the one to pay for those things. And my husband gave, money to his mom. And so we both have always had this thing, like when you have it, spend it, because you never know when it's going to come again. Because as teenagers, we felt that was true. It became so true for us that, there's been times where doing my nails feels guilty. And he's like, why? You come home and you feel so much better.
Yeah.
You need it. It's like your uniform on stage. And right.
Well, what you're talking about right now is the reason I actually love what I do, because it's using real human behavior. Like the running title for my talk that I'm going to be giving is how to get out of debt by spending money. And because it's using real human behavior, you get to spend, and you get to spend it in, like, instead of saying like, don't save, close up, like literally it's saying you have, again, separate the income from the outflow. And so your bills are good. And then literally you get to sit down and spend all that money. Like in your mind, you're literally spending it. I'm going to give myself this much for my nails, or I'm going to give myself this much for the next month that I can spend on whatever the F I want. And you just give yourself that. Put it in cash or on a debit card or whatever. We need this much for food. What's interesting, by the way, is food is very flexible. I found if most people generally by doing this save like 30% on their food. Like if you've been trying to stick to $1,000 budget, guaranteed if you just say $700 is what we're spending and you put it in an account or on a debit card, you just don't spend more than that. It's really, really cool. So you start saving that way. And instead, and by the way, on the same token, when you just write $700 for the month when you're used to spending $1,000 for budget, almost impossible to stick to. It's a really interesting phenomenon. But when you put it in there and you know exactly how much is for food specifically, whatever reason, our behavior adjusts. And I remember adjusting when we went to a restaurant, and it wasn't a big deal. We like to do restaurant stuff, but it was like a $60 bill, and we still had like 2 weeks left before we were going to get more food money, and it took almost all the food money. We're like, holy F-bomb. We need to do something different, because $60 would get us pretty far at Costco. And so we did a couple of things. We just shopped more consciously when it came to food and realized we didn't need to do that much. But from there, we was like, but we still want to have fun once in a while. So we opened up a date account, so we could specifically go on date night stuff and do that guilt-free, but at the same time, not take away from other areas and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been fun.
Awesome. I love it. So what would you say if you, like you said, what you could go back and tell yourself, right? Before you started, what would your future self come and tell you? Like I always talk about kind of confidence from your future self. So like if my future self is a $40 million company, she's got a New York Times best-selling book. She's speaking on these stages. She's friends with all the people that we used to travel and go to see. Right. And she just has like, there's no fear. She already's been through all this stuff. Right.
Right.
So what would he come back? What would that Calvin come back and tell you today?
He would say, keep going and go even more all in on you. Like, bro, like I've been stepping into that a little bit more and more, but he'd just be like, yeah, dude, it's going to get cool. You're going to deal with these struggles or these challenges, or at least things that you perceive as struggles or challenges. But trust me, man, they're not only just little bumps, but they're 100% there to serve you. So just keep your head down, keep going, because shit's about to get really, really real. Yeah. That's what he'd say.
Right.
No, dude, I'm super pumped. I've done exercises like this, and I do it and teach it actually, because that's what made me quit my day job. is me thinking of myself 10 years in the future. And I first imagined, like, what if I woke up and nothing changed? But then I had a conversation with my 10-year-older self, and he essentially said, dude, if you're ever going to do it now. Like, you're not going to get more responsibility as you get, or you're going to get more responsibility as you get older, not less. So if you're going to do it now. And that's what made me say I'd rather go after it and fail than just wake up and not know what I could have done. So I take advice from my older self, especially if I've had like really deep depressive times. If you can connect to that power, that 10-year-older self power that feels more wise within you of like, what should I do? Like, it makes your now problems feel way smaller. Because if you try to remember a deep problem that you had from this point 10 years ago, they're so much smaller, And yeah, I've done those exercise that too, where I like just try to imagine, what is he saying to me? And it just makes me excited to just get up and keep going because it looks really good. I love how yours is so specific. On stage, no fear, New York Times bestseller. That's rad.
Oh yeah, she's killing it, and it's interesting because I think a lot of times, we're basing all of our stuff, like you said, on the past. So if you do the unknown, if you now make it known who she is, and I call her ELJ, it's my, and so I know what would ELJ do, right?
Yeah.
And what how can I incorporate that today? And okay, if she was sitting here, what's the next step? What's that next step that you might think is ginormous? But when she tells you, she's like, we've already done this, dude. Just take the step already. And then you're like, what? You mean, me, I asked Bo Eason to be on the world's greatest speaking stage as the female voice. And he's like, well, let's do it. But I remember walking towards him going, what are you doing? You could be looking like a fool right now. And I was like, nah, I just went.
I got this.
And it was her that did that. It wasn't, and it felt like an out-of-body experience because
that's so cool.
Even if I took my confidence, which I'm pretty confident in the grand scheme of things, but still, those things still kick up for me too.
That's awesome. I dig it, man. A little exercise that I've done, like on times that I've gotten really, 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 really stuck with this thing. Because we all have them. Like if we feel down or depressed or anxious, what I do is so random. I don't know where this came from, but it just works like crazy. I take 2 different colored pens, generally like a blue and a black, and then red. And I will literally start having a conversation with my 10-year-older self, writing down what I'm feeling and then dialoguing back in red, my 10-year-older self saying this. And just that going back and forth, like I've unlocked some really cool stuff like doing that. So it's really rad that you have a similar practice. I had no idea.
This is why we have these kind of conversations, right?
Yeah.
You surround yourself with people who have different results and better results and different things. And, I just love having people like you in my life that, we've gone to conferences together and we've hung out and it was funny. Somebody was saying the other day about the School of Greatness Academy. And I said, the funny thing is we started with 100 people. And then since it was a beta, there was a lot of rough stuff and maybe only 40 of us stuck around.
Uh-huh.
And then we were grandfathered in for life.
Right.
But I remember the most impactful thing was when I said, I want to do a Skype call, because at the time there was no Zoom, Skype call with every single person in this group, because I want to get to know them from all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And now I've met a lot of them in person at other conferences.
That's
had
so
a
cool.
woman come up to me from Ibiza and she's like, you were in my accountability group. Oh my gosh, you're Aaron Loman Jack. And I'm like, what?
Just random, like completely different country?
Yes, she's from Ibiza. She's from Spain.
And you were there or here?
I was at a Chalene Johnson event in Orange County, in Orange. Yeah.
Long Beach.
Yeah.
Was that last year?
Or the year after? No, yeah, it must
was
have
it
been
the Success event?
Huh?
Was it the Success event?
No, it was her MIA.
Okay. I saw Chalene Johnson in Long Beach at an event, but it's a different event. Okay.
Yeah, no, this was her event. And but somebody came screaming across the room and was like, oh my gosh, you're Aaron Loman Jack. And she's like, there's 3 more of us in here. And I was like, what? So like I got to meet these people that they knew they were all going somehow, that they were in contact. And then they saw that I was there. So they were on a lookout looking for me. And I was like blown away that can happen. But same with Experts Academy. When you and I went, I had never met Kevin before.
Oh yeah. He's a stud.
Yeah.
He hooked me up with a ticket at Russell Brunson's event. I was there just doing podcasts.
That's awesome.
And so shout out to him. It was super rad. I was just, because a lot of times going to events now, I love going to events because of the people that it attracts, and then you just can connect on the conversation that we've had at different events. And so I was there to just connect, to do podcasts that I scheduled, and a lot of my friends were showing up at the same place, so I was there doing podcasts. But Tony Robbins was coming, and so he somehow heard I didn't have a ticket, and he totally hooked me up, man. It was awesome. Yeah. He hooked me up with like $1,000 ticket, and so I got to see Tony Robbins the next day. So yeah, Kevin is a beast.
Yeah. Well, we all get extra tickets to all these things, right? So yeah. I'm always like, how can we share? I'm always down. So if you ever have tickets, can always come my way. I'd love, to have more time with you. It's always fun. So thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much for all the golden nuggets. I can't wait. How can people find out more information about you?
Calvin Wayman everywhere. So if you Google Calvin Wayman, it will go to my website, or if you go to calvinwayman.com, or if this is on a podcast, they might my podcast is probably a good place too. If you just search Curious with Calvin Wayman, I'm there. Curious with Calvin Wayman is the podcast. And then on Facebook and Instagram, Calvin Wayman.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to have you on my podcast. And thank you all for tuning in. And we will see you on stage.